Okay. So dark night of the soul are so debilitating. And if you don't know how to approach a dark night of the soul, they can completely take you out of the game. Hello and welcome, everybody. It's me, your sweet and sour, full of power, purple water falling from the sky, Violet Rain Freedom, coming to you live from my adorable little mobile office. This is our cute little camper we've lived in a couple of times, and this is we had her all redone. We've got some cute subway tile over there. This is the manifestation love nest of magical and wonderment. So today we're going to be talking about dark nights of the soul. So if you've ever had a dark night of the soul, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. So for me, my very first dark night of the soul actually happened when I was 12 years old. So when I was 12 years old, I was living on a 72-acre farm. My dad was an anesthesiologist and made amazing money. We had cows and horses and pigs and ducks and chickens and geese and kitties and dogs and snowmobiles and a ski boat and all of these amazing things, like incredible things. And, I had no idea how good I had it. It was just my life. And almost overnight, which I know it was a long time coming, about a year and a half, but almost overnight, felt like everything in my life completely changed. My parents split up. We moved away from all of my friends. My best friend lived just a mile down the road, which was pretty close, where we lived, and I could bike to her house. There was actually a canal road that like would cut right across um, the field to her, and everything changed. My mom went back to work full time. She had been a stay-at-home mom for like 4 years, and that had been her plan and her goal. And so she went back to work full time, and we moved from our big, amazing, remodeled farmhouse into a little tiny, like 1,500 square foot house. I went from having my own room to sharing a room. Went from a huge yard to this huge field, right? 72 acres to this little tiny yard. Everything changed really rapidly. My mom was back in work. My brother became an alcoholic. My little brother started struggling with mental health really severely. It attempted to take his life, and my whole world was crumbling around me. It was a very, very dark time. And crazy enough, that was the very first time that I was introduced to personal development. There's a book by a woman named Carol Tuttle called Remembering Wholeness, and that book completely changed my life. I actually wrapped that book in like this brown paper, like we used to have to wrap our books for school. I know kids don't have books in school anymore, they all have Chromebooks, but I wrapped this book in paper so that I could read it at school and not have people know what I was reading. And I fell absolutely in love with personal development. And it was because it got me through my dark night of the soul. That's when I discovered and understood the power of thoughts, manifesting and creating your life, connecting to angels and spirit guides, using spirituality as a powerful bridge into higher, more powerful ways of reframing and seeing what you're experiencing. Um, that's when I really strengthened my relationship with the divine, and from a very young age was feeling the purpose. Like these hard things I'm going through are happening for a reason. My brother being in and out of jail, him getting my best friend in high school pregnant, like all of these things, every time something really tragic, scary, overwhelming, or traumatic happened, I was represenced and regrounded in this is happening for a divine reason. This is happening for a purpose. And I am so grateful for that. And so that was the first time that I got through a dark night of the soul and found principles and tools to make it through that. Um, I went on to experience life as we often do, and I would have like little mini crises and mini dark nights of the soul, if you will. But my next major dark night of the soul was when I left my religion from birth. And the way that I experienced that religion was very cult-like. And it walking away from that required me to rebuild all of my foundations for how I experience and go through life. I had to figure out how to make decisions without having a church tell me what to do. I had to decide what's healthy in a relationship. I had to decide how I wanted to parent. I had to decide what was moral or immoral, what I believed about all of these different pieces and components. And it was incredibly challenging and still is at times. Like, there are still times where I struggle with finding my own internal voice and struggle with not and feeling okay to make mistakes and feeling okay to not be perfect because of some of that upbringing. So what I did during that time was I also threw myself into personal development. I was pregnant at the time, and so I really cocooned. And I took a lot of time, months and months, to process what I was going through and to fill into all of those different things. I threw myself into businesses and gave myself purpose that way. And it took about a year for me to start coming out of that time period. And it was off the back of that time period when I had attended one of Tony Robbins' events, Date with Destiny, that I launched my first book. I did my first fitness competition. I lost like 85 pounds or 65 pounds or something like that, crazy, in like an 8 month window while breastfeeding, preparing for this fitness competition. And also, like, launched my business in a way I never had. That was the year that I did my first 100K in business. And before that, my previous years was like 42,000, 57,000 in business. And then all of a sudden I had this huge spike of growth, and it was all connected to my inner growth and the launch pad of this dark night of the soul. And so I've seen this again and again and again. I experienced another dark night of the soul in 2018 when I separated from my previous partner and was going through a divorce at the time and had an 18-month-old baby and was like redefining myself. And that is the year that I used that launch pad to discover that I was gay. I discovered plant medicine that year. And, during that process and aligning my energies and manifesting, I manifested my beautiful wife, and the family that we have now. So every single time that I've had a dark night of the soul, and I'm sure you can see this inside of your own life as well. So if you're watching the replay, say hi, hashtag replay, let me know. And I would love to hear if you're willing to share either here in the comments or in Messenger what your dark night of the soul has been. And I'm specifically wanting to speak to people who are in a dark night of the soul right now. And, it could be because of losing a job or having a business go under. It could be a divorce. Um, it could be, regaining a bunch of weight, a health issue or a health concern. It doesn't really matter what it is. But what a dark night of the soul really does is it strips us down to our bare bones, and we feel incredibly raw in the world. And during Dark Night of the Soul, there's kind of a particular MO that you get to kind of take on. And there's sort of a reclusing that happens. It's like winter, which is really symbolic that I'm launching Dark Night of the Soul right now on the winter solstice in honor of going into our darkness fully to start reclaiming our light. And so I know the people who are going to be working through their Dark Night of the Soul in the Dark Night of the Soul program, reclaiming their light and reestablishing their confidence, are going to be joining me here in these next few days and coming into the program. So if this is resonating with you at all and you're like, oh my gosh, this is for me, this is what I'm meant to be doing, I need to be going into and sitting with the darkness and my Dark Night of the Soul and using it as a launch pad to make 2025 my most abundant, my most expansive, my most joyful, playful year yet, private message me or give me a little heart in the comments and I will get in touch with you, okay? So, Dark Night of the Soul are so debilitating. And if you don't know how to approach a Dark Night of the Soul, they can completely take you out of the game. This is where we see a lot of entrepreneurs that have tried two or three things and it didn't work out, and they completely give up on their dreams and their ambitions, and they start settling and they start going back into old ways of thinking and getting replugged into the matrix and coming from a desperate place. This is where we see people turning to a lot of addictions and going into depression and going into dark cycles of bitterness and apathy and disappointment. And that does not have to be your experience. And that is not what I would recommend doing. I would recommend really leaning into what this experience is seeking to teach you, what it is wanting to show you about yourself. For me, I know for a fact I would not be coaching and I would not be a motivational speaker if my parents hadn't gone through that divorce when I was 12. Because it was through that experience that I found my purpose, my mission, which truly was this to help other people avoid or move through their own dark nights of the soul, to have a shortcut in that process, to not need to turn to addiction like my brother did, right? To not need to turn to depression and self-hate like my little brother did, to not turn to, love addiction or sex addiction like other siblings did. And this is why I do the work that I do. This is the foundation of everything that I do in the work that I do is mindset and alignment inside of the way that you're approaching the problems in your business, the way you're approaching your financial difficulties. And when we're aligned and when our mindset is solid, any strategy will work for us. And this is what I teach my business clients. I'm like, there are so many amazing strategies to bring in leads and to bring in clients, but it doesn't matter how much action we take. If you're internally misaligned, no amount of action can make up for a misalignment in vibration. It's the law of the universe. So we get to understand and work with, the laws of business for sure. But if we're not understanding the laws of the universe and how those things work in conjunction with each other, uniting those two things, the masculine and the feminine, spiritual and the physical, we're going to be hitting our head against a wall repeatedly. So, this is my heart and my intention inside of this live is to say a couple of things. First of all, if you're in a dark night of the soul, I see you. It's no fucking joke. And the second thing I want to say that might be potentially a little bit irritating, but I'm saying it to hopefully spark or shift something inside of you, which is also congratulations. This dark night of the soul experience stands to be something that you end up being so grateful for the rest of your life. I've come back to my parents' divorce and that very first initial time, right, when I experienced my fairy tale dream world as a kid being crushed by reality, um, as the most catalytic experience of my entire life and something that has completely shaped the person that I am and something that if I could go back in time and change it, I never fucking would. And I'm wanting to offer you a little hope for someone on the other side of my 12-year-old dark night of the soul and offer you a smidgen of hope because hope is where it starts and hope is what this whole message is about. Hope that you can feel differently. Hope that one day you will look back on the hellacious experience you're in, whether it is, disappointment, dreams not coming together, things not turning out the way that you planned, a divorce, regaining all of the weight, feeling like you're back at square one, feeling like, how did I get here? Feeling like a stranger in your own life. That there is a day, and it can be sooner than you even imagine, where you're looking back on this experience and you're thinking, I am so undeniably, genuinely, completely, and totally grateful that this happened in the way that it did. And if I could go back in time and change it, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. And that exists for you on the other side. But the only way to that place is through it. The only way through a dark night of the soul is through it. And there is some messiness inside of that and some surrender inside of that and some deep grieving inside of that. But you don't have to do it alone. That's the lie. The lie is that you're alone. The lie is that it's hopeless. The lie is that there's no way out. And it's just simply not true. And so I wanted to reach out my hand to you and offer you some hope and some guidance and some insight that there are ways out. And the first step is to believing it. And whatever small spark, and it only takes a small spark of hope that you have, feed and fan that flame. Feed it and fan it. Because I'm telling you, like, there is so much beauty and possibility on the other side of this. This is your launch pad. This is your launch pad to the success you've been wanting to create in your life, in your business, in your relationships. But it's about understanding how to show up in this dark night of the soul, how to lean into it, how to surrender into it, how to go there to be able to truly create the life that you want. So with that, I invite you to comment below or reach out in Messenger, share with me what's going on and where you're at, and give yourself permission to believe that this can become your launch pad to everything you've ever wanted. And I'm sending you so much love. If this has served you, please be sure to share this out, comment your insights below, and we'll talk to you again really soon.